Alright, this is part 2 to what if Deku got the Blacklight virus from Prototype. So last time we left off with Deku actually being accepted into UA and him trying to like test out his quirk by having the biomass come out of his arms. So if you don't know what Prototype is or the abilities that you would get from the virus, just go to either you could just go to my part 1 and I explain a few of his abilities, the most basic stuff that he gets. But there's a lot since the virus just constantly evolves and things like that. So let's get back to the what if. So Deku gets to the classroom at a normal time, and this is the point where he goes into the classroom and he sees Bakugo getting yelled at by Ida because he has his feet on the table, and you know how Ida is, he doesn't like that. So then he sees Ochako there, and she like comes up to him, thanks him for saving her, and she like says, what type of that was a pretty cool quirk that you had. Is it like a strength enhancing quirk? And Midoriya or Deku's like, yeah, he's like really awkward since he doesn't have any like experience talking to women, and as he's like being shy about this quirk because he doesn't know what to say and doesn't want to spill the secret about One for All. That's when Aizawa comes in and basically explains that they're going to have a fitness exam, and whoever does the worst is going to be expelled. So everyone gets into their uniforms and they go outside to do this. So it's a little bit different from canon because Deku's a lot stronger and he's able to use 100% of One for All, but only in his arms since he has muscle mass, the muscle mass ability. So uh, at this point, his muscles everywhere else, I think his he's as fast and as strong as maybe twice as strong or fast as a pro athlete, but not to the point of going like super far into like superhuman abilities at this point at least. So in the what's it called, the race, I would say he would get uh third because I think Ida would get first, and then Todoroki would get second, and he would get third, and Bakugo would be fourth, which would make him extremely angry at Deku since up to this point he doesn't think he has a quirk. Uh, and then when it comes to the ball throw, he Aizawa comes up to him and says, you know, you got to go 100% on this because he knows Aizawa knows that he has One for All. So Deku uses his muscle mass ability combined with One for All, and he does this throw at 100%. So I would say that his throw would be he would get second place in the ball throw. I think Ochako would still be number one because it would be Infinity, but I would say that Deku would be second because if you know muscle mass, it in the game it actually increases your throw distance and stuff like that. So I would think it would go halfway across the city, right? And in the test of strength, he would get number one because muscle mass combined with One for All is there's like no one really compares. So I would say the person who gets last place would probably be Mineta, and overall I think Deku would get first place, like in general. But as right as Aizawa says, pack up your things and leave, Mineta, you're expelled. I would think at this point because it's still the regular Deku because his quirk didn't manifest until he was 15. So he's still that kind natured person who wants to be a hero. So I would think that Deku would kind of protest this, and Mineta would see this, and I think their relationship would become closer than it is in the anime because of this fact. I think they would have more of a kind of brotherly relationship because I would think that Deku would see him as like a younger brother and vice versa for Mineta. So I think after some time, I think Aizawa would eventually, you know, agree because he doesn't want to, continue this conversation, and he sees how passionate Deku is for this, kid that he barely just met. So it goes next. The next part would be, you know, combat training. I think with All Might, and they're doing the hero versus villains. It'd be the same teams as usual, but uh, I think the hero costume for Deku would be a little bit different because of the quirk that he has now. I think it would be something that exposes his arms because that's what that's what transforms most of the time. So I would think like something like a maybe like a hoodie with no sleeves, kind of like Genos in One Punch Man. If you see how that design looks in like near the end of like season two, and I don't think it's just in season two. I'm pretty sure it's in the first season too, in the first season also. But that's basically what I think. So it'd be Deku, Unuraka, or Ochako. Uh, they're gonna be like a few floors up, and this is where he hears Bakugo because the virus also enhances your senses. So he would hear him coming, and he would tell Uraraka to, get to the top floor where Ida's at, so that Deku could like fight like full out without hurting her. So when Deku, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Bakugo is very mad at this point because he just saw Deku use such a powerful quirk, and he thinks that Deku was hiding this from him, and that he thinks less of him. So at this point, Bakugo is just extremely mad, like looking for blood at this point, right? And he comes charging at Deku, and since Deku knows how he fights, he's able to dodge his right hook and actually slam into the ground. But it goes a little bit different since he could use more than you know, more than like what was it in the anime, like 5% of One for All. He actually doesn't use One for All, but he does. Actually, yeah, he does use One for All, but like a small percentage, probably like 30%. Combine that with muscle mass, and he actually slams Bakugo a lot harder than he does in the anime. He actually slams him through the ground to the next floor beneath him, and this actually knocks out Bakugo for a few minutes. Right now, Chaku's like at the top with Ida, and she doesn't know how to get past him since he's so fast. And that's when Deku comes in, and he basically says, "I'll deal with." He basically says that he'll deal with Ida while Ochako goes for the bomb, and she goes for it, but then Ida like tries to block her, and that's when Deku comes in for a punch, but he actually misses because he doesn't know how fast Ida is, and he doesn't really know how he fights. And he when he goes tries to go for the punch, he counters this with a reciprocal, not a reciprocal burst. He basically knees him, using his jet engines to increase the speed. So the combination of that speed combined with the momentum of Deku leaping into a punch actually knocks the wind out of himself, and he gets knocked back a few feet. And this is when Bakugo from the lower floors wakes up, and he's just beyond mad at this point. And he actually releases the pin from his grenade gauntlets and shoots it straight upwards in hopes of actually taking out Deku. You know, so this blasts away Ida and Deku, but Uraraka uses her, her quirk to make herself uh, float, and she's actually able to reach the bomb because of this. So Bakugo and Ida end up losing, and Bakugo, falls back into unconsciousness because he wasn't ready to to handle the recoil of releasing such a powerful explosion. And you know, Deku is very confident, right? and people just saw what he just did. And I'm gonna say that the virus is actually changing a little bit of his brain chemistry, in the sense that it's giving him more different hormones and different hormones and like testosterone to actually boost his confidence even more, because the virus wants to replicate itself, so once it gets different hosts, so it actually encourages Midoriya to actually seek, as you would say in like, how do I explain this? Kind of like he's looking for a mate, so to say, in the basic terms of the most primal terms you could say. And because he has this confidence, he actually goes up to, I would say, Momo, because their quirks, although they may at first seem different, they're actually very similar, because both use things that they eat and turn it into different objects. And this is what Deku explains. He's like, "Wow, I can't believe we have very similar quirks." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And Deku at this point, he remembers how much that knee to the gut hurt. So he goes up to Kiroshima, right? And he's like, he gets him to the side. And he's like, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And he's like, you know how Kirishima is. He wants to be a man and help out others. So he's like, "Yeah, what do I need to do?" He's like, "Give me a piece of your hair." And he's like, okay. Because he doesn't know at this point that Deku can, change himself depending on what biomass he eats or consumes, I mean. And Deku finds this out because he's like, well, every time I use my biomass, I feel hungrier. So he's like, there must be a correlation. So he's betting on this kind of like strand of hair, and once he gets it, like biomass goes around it. He doesn't eat it normally. Biomass goes around the hair, and that's how he absorbs it. And this is how Deku actually unlocks the armor ability, and it covers his body, but it's a weaker version than it is in the game. I think it would be as strong as like stone, but not as strong as it is in game, where it's able to like block rockets and things like that. So Momo's just impressed because she never knew how amazing this quirk could be. And Deku's just like, yeah, because he's super confident, but he wants to stay humble, so he doesn't like brag about it too much. And then after all the other fights are done, he goes to the infirmary to try to see what his quirk actually is, because at this point, that was actually the first time for All Might to see that quirk. So they go to the infirmary with the recovery lady to see what his quirk is. So the first thing that they do, what they do to test it, is that they take a sample of his blood and they run it over a microscope, and they find out that there's these little things attached to his cells that actually like mutated them, and this is what the Blacklight virus is. And he sees that he's able to control him. So Deku thinks of a name for his quirk, and he's like, "Oh, let me call it living virus," right? And since he's able to control it, he gets like an idea, right? Since he's able to heal himself and he's able to control the cells, he asks All Might like, "Hey, can you show me that that wound that you showed me before?" He's like, "Okay, what are you trying to do?" He's like, "I want to see if I could heal it." And All Might just like look, he has his like eyes wide, and he's like, "You really think you could do that?" And he's like, "I don't know, let me try." So he like he kind of like touches the area where All Might was injured, and biomass starts to slowly go and seep into his skin, and All Might is in like some pain, because it's similar to how Mercer from Prototype 2 was infected by, not Mercer, I mean Heller from Prototype 2 was infected by Mercer. And it just, biomass just fills that void where the injury was, and it starts to glow orange just like how it is, or orangey red, just like how it was in Prototype 2 with Heller on the back where like all that biomass was, and it starts to heal, and it kind of hurts for All Might, but in the end it like brings him back to, I would say this brings him back to his prime, since the virus enhances your abilities. So at this point we have an All Might that's fully healed and in his prime, and that he's like, All Might at this point he's like lost for words. He doesn't know how to thank him because now he could do his job a lot better since he has no timer now. And hearing all this was Bakugo, since he was in the infirmary because he was knocked out pretty harshly. So it does the same thing as the anime where he thinks of quitting UA or whatever, and Deku's like runs out to him. He explains just like how he was in the anime, how he's the successor to All Might, and it goes basically how it was in the anime where he decides to stay. And yeah, so I think I'll end this part here, and in the next episode or the next part I'll do the USJ attack with the villains and see how that goes. And I want to say that in this what if, Deku is going to be very overpowered, since there is basically almost no limit to this virus because it's able to read genetic code, like the entire genome, right? And he's able to mutate off of that. So I was thinking, like, if he's able to consume like other people's like DNA, should he have the ability to copy their quirks, since the virus is able to change his own genome? Should he be able to copy whatever, genes create their quirk and be able to put it into himself, or should it just stay to like the prototype abilities and some variations of those? So just comment what you guys think, and if you have any other what ifs that you want me to do, I'll look into them and I might do a video. So this is gonna be the end of part 2.